with? Ah, so nothing too serious. Well, I really don't have much to say. I'm sorry? There was no class on Tuesday. I was in my office. Watching porn. Not really. Oh, man. Well, how many kinds are there? Wow. I am in the presence of some very, very experienced professionals. Everything good for you. You should do something with that craft of yours. Yeah, well, that was your fault. Hello. Who are you? Ah. Hello. But any other interesting questions? Everything, since you're on a roll. Anything else? Sometimes there are these days on colleges called Professional Development Day that they take all of us instructors and staff and they put us in a room and they develop us. So I'm a changed man. I'm sorry? Yeah, I've never gone to any of them. Well, I've stopped going for the past maybe 15 years. So I just sit in my office and have some coffee.
Do we think it's actually just a way for them to save a little bit of money?
No. I think it's something that has to do with the law that colleges have to do or fulfill certain hours.
Maybe like flex days.
Something like that. Yeah.
When you were a kid, you had like minimum days and you thought it was so exciting, and then as an adult, you're like, oh, the school is running out of money and couldn't afford to have us there.
Yeah. Yeah, in Iran, we only had Fridays half off. That was our only holiday. So it's nice to be on campus but not be in a classroom.
My sister works at a school, and kids aren't there on Fridays.
Oh, yeah?
It is a charter school, but yeah, elementary, or no, I'm sorry, it's K-3.
So anything else? Yes, Lilac. I'm sorry?
I'll let it stew.
Stew? Of course. Sure, I know.
What type of music do you listen to?
Not your kind. I mean, not that your kind is bad. It's just uninteresting. I was just joking. Persian music is quite sad, and it's sad because the culture is sad, and the culture is sad because its history is sad. We don't create people like Snoop Dogg and Rihanna and those people because socially, politically, the country is always like in chaos. And it's very much like when you've had a traumatic childhood, it's, especially when it comes to like intimate relationships, it's difficult to form, relationships that have depth and are continuous because there's a good amount of fear that lives inside you. So if I was to take you back in time, Iran was kind of invaded by the Greeks, then by the Romans, then by the Afghans, then by the Turks. Then you have the French, the English, and right now, Americans. And so when you've had a culture where for the past like, few thousand years, it's always lived under the tyranny of invaders, you always create music that becomes an expression of what has happened to you. So if you happen to be sad, you kind of write sad poetry and you play sad music. If you happen to be in a happy mood, you write about how wonderful life is. And it's not that Persians don't have happy music, they do, but if you pay close attention to the way people sing it and the way people play it instrumentally, there is a good amount of sadness that lives inside the music. And so I suppose the moment you're just born in Iran, there is a hint of sadness that just lives inside you, you can't get it out. And it just gets more and more enforced or reinforced because that's what you see every day on the streets. So we had maybe 5 or 10 pop singers. And by pop, I don't again mean like Rihanna and Snoop Dogg or Justin Timberlake, And then I remember one day I was listening to Sattar, who was one of my favorites. He had just this silky voice. And not everyone was allowed to sing. You had to have a very, I suppose, silky, beautiful voice that would please the ears, It's only today that all sorts of junky people can sing with like awful, voices. And so one of my favorites, his name was Sattar, just found one of his audio cassettes, and it was in remembrance of some guy, I forget his name, and he was singing traditional music. And it's an interesting phenomenon because one person can actually change the course of your life depending, on how or what that person does and who he is. It's like without Cristiano Ronaldo, I suppose I would have never been interested in soccer again. And without Bjorn Borg, I would have never been interested in tennis. And you always need a vehicle. You need someone to inspire you towards something. Without that person, you will never get there. And so I said, man, if my favorite singer, pop, singer, Sattar, can inspire me to, if he's singing traditional music, maybe I can too. So from that point on, I started training for traditional music. And they take maybe 5 lines of the poetry of Hafiz or Rumi and Sa'di, and that 5 lines, it takes about maybe 45 minutes to start and to finish. Hello. And so once I became, I suppose, passionate about the traditional music, I would go from Roseville, which is about 20 minutes above Sacramento, to San Jose 3 times a week. So 3 hours going, 3 hours coming back for a 45-minute lesson. And then I realized it's just too much of a distance. And our singers used to be called qawwal. You don't know how to read, you don't know how to write. And so very much if you look at the Renaissance period, if you look at the medieval period, what you realize is that you have stained glasses on churches, or in churches you have beautiful church doors, and all of them have the story of Jesus Christ, the fall, temptation, and your way back to salvation. And these were symbols the moment you walk into a church to remind you of who you are, and what you need to do to perhaps, attain eternal life, so to speak. And so the singers had only one responsibility towards their society, either talk about social issues or spiritual issues, And that's one of the things about, I suppose, this happened many, many, many hundreds of years ago, that certain schools of thought only entertained theories. You have like Eckhart Tolle and Jordan Peterson just coming on TV and telling you what happiness is, for example, right? Then you have somewhere in, say, Persia or Iran, where theory becomes applicable. In other words, you bring the theory from up here down here, and then you try to play with it to see how it works. It's like you have all these ideas about love, and then you fall in love, and then you realize it's nothing what you read in books, and it's nothing that you imagined. It's really, really, really tough. You're filled with angst. And so their task was to some extent, remind people that despite all the awful things that they see down here, there is something that lives inside them that can't be touched by space and time, by corruption of politics, by not finding bread or meat or milk, that despite all the difficulties down here, there is something about you that you can find some, I suppose, permanence, stability, wisdom. But the journey is tough. And so most of the lyrics that you will have in traditional music has to do with longing and what a scumbag you are. So, is it? Yeah, it doesn't really move your body at all, It's kind of the moment you listen to traditional music, you just sit. Just sit. No, it doesn't. So anyone else? Yeah. Ariana?
So you don't dance?
I have seen some videos of, first of all, there is dance. Every culture creates its own set of movements. Okay, so you have in the Arab world, for example, the belly dancing. Now, one of the things about belly dancing is if you have no experience of the culture, if you have no knowledge of the culture, you just think that there's these naked women, with a bra and some thong, and they're just dancing around to please the men. But the truth is, belly dancing goes through 3 different stages. And for the woman who performs this particular dance, it's very much as painful as going through child labor, because they're trying to inspire certain things in their audience, from the physical to emotional and then the spiritual. And the woman has to be really, 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 really good. One of the things that I think it's interesting or maybe noteworthy is that we have a tendency of watering down everything. And it's something that just happens in time. One of the stories that comes from the Persian world is, as you know, when we go to someone's house, we always take a gift. Some people bring tea, some people bring another kind of liquid or juice for others to drink, some people bring food. And upon leaving, they say a thank you, okay? So this particular fellow takes as a housewarming gift a duck to the host's house. Says, here's my duck, thank you for inviting me. And what we do usually with the gifts that is offered to us, let's just say in this case, we take the duck into the kitchen, we chop off the head, we clean it up, oven it, and we'll make duck soup. And so we give it to the person who brought the duck and we all sit and eat together. And so the following day, someone knocks on the door and says to the host, like me, and says, I am the friend of the friend who brought you the duck. And because you're hospitable people, that's some of the things that poverty does to you. You share whatever you have with others. And so you invite this man in, even though you don't really know him, and you say, here's, what's left over of the soup. And so he eats some soup, thanks you, and then leaves. Another day passes by, and some guy comes in and says, I'm the friend of the friend of the friend who brought you the duck. All these strangers knocking on your door. Please come in. You place before him a bowl of soup, and he thanks you and leaves. 2-3 weeks pass by. Every day a stranger comes in, And so on the 21st day, some guy knocks on the door, you open. Who are you? I'm the friend of the friend of the friend of the friend of the friend who brought you the duck. Oh, please come in. And so, placed before him a bowl of soup, he takes a spoonful, and then he looks at you and says, this is only warm water. And I say to him, well, this is the soup of the soup of the soup of the soup of the soup. So if you look at our history, for example, as human beings, what you realize is that we were thrown down here. I don't know how we came down here, if it's God, if it's, as Darwin would say, biology, but somehow we landed down here. And we're in a very, strange position in life where nothing satisfies us, nothing pleases us. We're always discontent, we're always betrayed, and we're always seeking security and safety and protection from some force out there. And we realize nothing is ever enough, And so we try to find meaning in a world that is constantly trying to remove meaning from your life. You fall in love. A couple months later, you look at the person, you say, what happened to my love for him or her? I'm not in love. You seek a job, you have it, the money is good, and you say, I don't find satisfaction in this. So it doesn't really matter what you touch. Ultimately, as Dante would say, everything that human beings touch turns into dust. Right? And so one of the ways that we used to, at least, express our frustration with life, our longing for something that is not touched by time, by life, that remains uncorrupt, we created the world of art, poetry. Khalil Gibran becomes immortal. He tells us that every time there is sorrow inside you, look at it very, very closely, and in it you can find happiness. We find people like Edward Munch and his painting of the Scream, where, look around you, Ariana. There are people who don't look very happy in this room. They kind of look lost and confused, but most importantly, they just look completely alone. And Munch, what can he do? Nothing. All he can do to alleviate some of our difficulties in life is lock himself in a room and paint the Scream. That every time your hand goes up and you ask a very, very serious question, the question itself isn't serious. It's like if I invite you to my house and you come to my house, it is true I see you, it is true that you smile, it is true that you feel comfortable, but my question would be, it's a Saturday night, it's a Friday night. Why would, of all the places, you choose to come to my house? I'm not a casual guy. I don't take things casually. I don't like cheap conversations. Why is it that you come to my house? Well, you come to my house because there is something about you that's missing. You may not know what it is. You may not even know what it is that you're longing after, yearning after, but the truth is you choose my house over every other person's house. And you have lots of friends. I have seen your phone. I have seen your contact list. They are enormous. And yet you come to my house, right? And so your presence, despite all the fun you may be having, it's an expression of someone in whom there is a good amount of longing, and that longing creates a good sense of loneliness. I am desperate for something, and I don't know what it is, and I think and I feel that maybe I can find it here in this house, in this room, in you. And so what you have in the case of Edward Munch is, the streets are crowded. filled with people. And yet here you are standing on a bridge and you're screaming. People hear you, but they just don't care. They're laughing. They're minding their own business. They have no compassion inside them. And even if they do, compassion, its application is very, very difficult. It means that you have to look at your companion and say, listen, let's go help those people. Let's invite that person to our house. Let's give them some food. Let's give them a bed to stay. Let's, give them a shower. But you realize the sacrifices are a bit too much. And so dancing used to be the same thing, in the sense that how the hell do you escape your body? And I'm not talking about ridiculous ceremonies that take place in Burning Man, for example, where you have all these losers living like ridiculous lives. And there is nothing wrong with it, because all of us have no choice but to live ridiculous lives. At a certain point, you say, oh, Burning Man is coming up, and it inspires you, because for about a week or two or 3 or 4, you say, you know what, like Jesus Christ, I'm going to leave life. I'm going to leave my job, I'm going to leave my companion, I'm going to leave all the ways that life abuses me. And I'm going to go into the desert, where there are no concrete buildings, there are no Safeways, there are no Costco's, where I'm glad you've been there. And, people don't feel inhibited. They can dance around naked. They can say stupid things. They can go to sweat lodges. They can have sex with 1,001 different people, and they can feel this freedom, And it's a very desperate attempt to find something that is solid. But eventually you will go back to the cheap life that you had in Oakland. Just because you had a one-night stand, it doesn't mean you have a relationship. It just means you had a one-night cheap stand. And so what dancing used to do for the people of antiquity was that, you create specific kinds of music. That particular music or that piece of art was supposed to penetrate a certain part of the human psyche. And once that part inside you opens up, then organically certain parts of you begins to move. And we call it sacred dancing, or we call it sacred music, or we call it sacred art. But it is sacred. There's nothing profane about it. It's only these days now that any kind of dance is sacred and any kind of painting is valuable. But that wasn't the case for the longest time in human history. Because that's why we had cults, that there are lots of people out there who are after bread, butter, food, shelter, and clothing. And life is tough, and that's their right. But there are some people who have the privilege of not desiring to pursue food, shelter, and clothing all the time. Once in a while, or maybe a lot of times in their day, they want to find themselves in an environment where their psyche is not so much gravitated towards the physical needs, but maybe emotional needs, maybe spiritual needs. And so cults used to do that for people. So going back to your, again, question about dancing. Dancing is great. It depends on the physical environment. It depends on the performers. It depends on the dancer. It depends on the music. It depends on the culture. It depends on the psychological maturity of both the musician and the person who's dancing. There are lots of factors to kind of consider. If I was to give you an example about, I don't know how many of you in this class have ever heard of whirling dervishes. Okay? These are some ridiculous people that came from the Persian world, at least this particular exercise. So what you have is, you have this young man named Rumi. Okay. He was a church-going man. He was a Muslim, so he would probably go to the mosque. And he knew the Quran inside and out. And he had 500 disciples. He was well known throughout the region. And so one day he runs into this old man, and this old man turns his life upside down. He says, yes, I know you're married, but I can see you're not in love. I know you have a boyfriend. I just know you're not in love. It's for safety and security, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And the difficulty that Rumi encountered was that he was just at the right place. In other words, there was this opening inside him. And I don't know how it happens. I think if you're still stuck on your ex, it doesn't matter how many dates you go on. There is no opening inside you. So All these people that are looking for your attention, you give them 5 seconds and then you close shop because you keep thinking about your ex and you keep thinking that, well, if I'm dating, it means I'm betraying my own conscience, I'm betraying the possibility of getting back with him, all those things. And so magic happens to him. This old man inspires him. And he says, you know, screw all the things I've been following or pursuing for the past 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I'm just going to figure out who this man is and why all of a sudden this has happened to me. So they lock themselves up in a room for about, I think, 2 months and no more. No one knows what happened to him. No one knows what happened behind closed doors. He doesn't want to talk to his disciples. You know, it's kind of like falling in love with someone. Little by little, your life shrinks. You can't focus on anything. You're obsessed. You have this thing called passion. And passion is the outcome of need. And passion is a word that comes from pasco, which means to suffer. You don't suffer. You're not in pain because you want something. You don't suffer because you desire something. You suffer only because you're emotionally entangled. You need that thing and you don't know how to get it. Maybe you're shy. Maybe you're conflicted. Maybe you're anxious. Maybe you're just confused. And all these different emotions rise to pasco, and then you lose sleep, and then you lose food, and then you lose laughter, you lose friends, and all you do is just focus on this one experience that was given to you. Now, a lot of us retreat because it is painful, because the future is unknown, and we are creatures after power, because power allows us to kind of create a solid future for ourselves. I go to Laney because I'll graduate in 2 years, and then I'll go to Stanford. I'll graduate in 2 years after that. Then I'll go to Brown. I'll graduate with a master's, and I'll go to Stanford again. I'll get my PhD, and then I'll have a job. Then I'll buy a wife. Then I'll buy a house, and all that stuff. But all of a sudden, you run into a Don Juan or a Socrates or a Jesus Christ, and they say, you know, you can go to school, but you won't be educated. You can be married, but you won't be in a relationship. And so all of a sudden, you know, all these confusions come about. So there comes a point, of course, this old man looks at Rumi and says, you know what? I don't want to be around you anymore. He leaves. And Rumi, you know, you would think that being spiritual, being emotionally and intellectually mature, that he would know what to do with his autonomy and independence. That's not the case. He falls into depression. I mean, he's really, really depressed. He can't even write anymore. He can't think anymore. He can't talk to his friends anymore. Nothing. He lives in isolation. And he says, I'm just looking for someone to inspire me. You know, and you would ask, you know, how is it possible for a religious man not to stand to pray? God can inspire him. The Quran can inspire him. Religious conversation can inspire him, but that's not the case. He needs a human being. And he needs a special human being who has a special quality to him. And he can only find 3 of them after the death of his teacher. And then one day, in a very depressed mood, he walks into the bazaar, into this like agora, the marketplace. And there are all these blacksmiths, and they're thinning out gold. You know, that's how it used to be way back then. And they're just hammering the gold so they can thin it. And as he hears the hammering of the gold, it just sounds very rhythmic, very harmonious. And all of a sudden, he starts dancing. And the head blacksmith looks at all of his students and all the shop owners and says, don't stop hammering away. Even if your gold turns into dust, do not stop hammering. As long as Rumi is dancing, just hammer away. And from that point on, the Woolish dervishes came about. Right now, it's just a marketplace. It's something that, that's one of the nice things, again, you know, watering things down, and especially in the bosom of capitalism, where everything becomes commodified and everything gets a price tag. And so, and that particular practice has been kept alive to this particular day. And people travel all the way from America, from Europe, from various places around the world to go to Turkey to celebrate the birth or the death of Rumi. And they go in Turkey, where Rumi is buried, or at least the tomb is there. Underneath in the basement, there is this huge hall. It's like a football field where the audience sits, and then you have the teacher and fellow students, and then you have special groups of people all of a sudden coming. There is some guy with a tambour, another guy with a reed flute or ney, and then begin to play. And then these people come and dance. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's nice to watch, but that's really all that it is. But that is what we call sacred dancing. And it was really born because of Rumi, and Rumi was a religious man. Right now, again, as I said, it's just something fun to watch. Go ahead.
To watch, but not.
Well, you can participate. You're not allowed to. And even if you were to participate, it doesn't really mean anything. I mean, look, you have to look at all the things you do in life within the context of relationships. Okay? I am addicted to tea. And there is a reason. When I was a kid, that's all we had, black tea. It's not like today you can go to a tea shop and they ask you, so can I help you? Can I have some tea? Well, what kind of tea? What do you mean, what kind? I mean, that was my experience in Oakland, you know. I went out with someone and we go to a tea store, and the person asked, well, what can I do for you? A tea, please? What kind? What do you mean? Well, we have like pomegranate tea and shit tea and pea tea. He said, I just want black tea. You know, there's like 1,000 teas out there. And so my taste buds have the experience of Persian Darjeeling black tea. And that particular experience gets repeated over and over and over again. And now I have a relationship. Okay. Now, as we've talked about in this class many, many times, you can have a one-night stand. You could have a 2-week relationship. You could have a 3-week relationship. Or you could have a lifelong relationship. Okay. If you want to have a lifelong relationship, it means that if you go to a tea shop and they offer you 50,000 different types of tea, you just say, listen, I just want black tea. Just shut up, give me my black tea, and that's it. And you say that because you've had 20 years of a relationship. It is true that you can go to Turkey and you can find various places, or Oakland. There are a couple of places in San Francisco, in San Jose, and in Berkeley. I don't know if there is any in Oakland, where these are folks who kind of say, you know, our lineage goes back to this particular teacher or that particular teacher, and we do these kind of exercises, right? And you can go to them and stay there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, but you won't really get much from any of that stuff because it's not really a relationship. A relationship is filled with, you have boyfriends, there are disagreements, there are conflicts, there are moments you want to walk out. There are moments, in fact, you do walk out because you come to realize they're just no good for you. There are moments you walk out because you realize you're no good for that. And like any other relationship, you know, it's just filled with ups and downs. But the point of it all is, is that you can certainly, you know, participate. Go ahead.
I guess I think of dancing as it's a way to have a relationship with your body, with yourself. I feel like I used to have quite like feel like I couldn't participate in it, but one of the most obvious things
It is.
you don't have to follow anyone else's movements or like any choreography. The rhythm of your body.
It's true. It's true. I think your body is the easiest way. You know, I can't find Aphrodite. I don't know where Venus is. You know. I can't find the muses. I don't know where they live. I can't go to the pantheon and look at for the feminine force, you know. But to embody all the narratives that exist within the world of mythology, I don't know if they're true or not, is that I find myself attracted to a woman, and once I find myself passionate, you know, impassioned for her, then I realize that I am embodied. My eyes keep looking at the door, and my ears keep looking at the door, or hearing, or wanting to hear, or my touch only desires to touch that particular person. And that's how it is. Dancing is very much the same way. You embody things, you know. I think you and I are speaking the same language. Perhaps the only difference is one happens to be not lasting for too long, impermanence, and then you drop back to the confusion of life, whereas the other one takes a good amount of discipline, stamina, sacrifice, suffering, and then you can dance at will, anytime. It doesn't have to be a mood that comes to you accidentally. And then when the dancing goes away, you dance differently, not so much with your body. Maybe you dance with your emotions very quietly. Sometimes you dance with your intellect very quietly. Sometimes you write. And you realize once you understand something really, really well, dancing is not just limited to the movement of your physical body. Because you're not just a physical body, there are other parts to you. Dancing is just one expression of something about you expressing itself. And you can see it, you can feel it, you can taste it. But there are other ways. You know, there is nothing wrong with falling in love. It's great. But I think once you understand how it works, how it comes about, how it can be protected, and how it can sustain you, not just in regards to say me and you, but you and everyone who comes your way. I'm not talking about like this cheesy love that you find on YouTube people talking about. I mean, it's really like anything else. It's like a piece of art. And to become proficient in any art, it just requires hard work. You know? Yes. Have you been stewed?
I guess I have a little bit of a question.
Just a little? Can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
So there is this guy who had some trouble in life. And usually in the ancient world, if you have like serious difficulties in life, you take your difficulties to the church. That's where God lives, supposedly. So this particular fellow, because it's the Middle East and he's Muslim, he takes his problems to the mosque and he stands to pray. It's a huge mosque. He prays for 5 hours and waits for God to resolve his issues, but it doesn't get resolved. He waits and waits and waits and waits. Nothing happens. So time passes. The difficulties are still there. So he goes to the very small mosque that is next to his house. And he shares his difficulties with this tiny little mosque. And his difficulties are resolved. So angrily, he walks to the big mosque. And he says, have you no shame? Look at your size. You're like 50 times the size of that small mosque. And yet you're so incompetent. That little mosque was able to answer my prayer. You just said little, it reminded me of the little story.
It was a nice story.
Yeah. Please.
So I have a copy of Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, and I've not really gotten into it. Every time that I open it, I don't really know where I'm going. Do you have a recommendation for like, is it a open it and read from start to finish kind of book? Is it a I'm thinking about love, I need to read on love today?
everything under the sun. To some extent, I was talking to my daughter this morning. She loves Indian food. So I said to her, Sophia, should I get some Indian food tonight? She says, no. What? What do you mean no? I don't want Indian food. What do you want? I don't know. I'll call you later. Okay. When I did my triple bypass, for about 3 weeks, I just had no taste for coffee. I had no desire for coffee. You know. And I suppose the point I'm trying to make is there are these, I suppose, hidden or invisible taste buds inside us. And those taste buds sometimes come about when there is a life experience. Let's say that you say to me, Amir, you know, you keep telling me I should read the Gospel of Luke or a Gospel of Bob, and it doesn't make sense to me. So it's okay. Just have it on the shelf. And then I say, well, what are you doing today? I said, nothing. Oh, well, we go to the office and sit for a little bit. And then we talk. I make you some coffee. And then we do this over and over and over and over again. And despite your desire not to become attached to anyone, not to feel for anyone intensely, you find yourself slowly, you know, liking me as I begin to like you. And then I say to you, why don't you go and read the Gospel of John? And you say, I hate the New Testament. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not even religious. So it doesn't really matter. Just go read the book. No, you say. God damn it, read the book. Okay. And one of the things about love, it's an unequal relationship that, you know, you don't want to come by, don't come by. You know, I can entertain myself in other ways. But eventually come by and say, okay, what book should I read? Gospel of John. What chapter? Whatever. Read from beginning to end. You say, okay. And then you get to this passage, and remember the days that you didn't come by, you keep thinking about me. And you say, well, why can't I have fun with life? I used to call my friends every day. I used to do this every day, but now I just sit home. And I like listen to his talks. What the hell is this? You know, I'm going crazy. And so as you read the Gospel of John, you come to a point where it says, you know, I am the bread. I am the life. Only through me. Now, you want to be happy while you're talking to your friends, but you realize all of a sudden you can't be happy. You want to like enjoy your time with your friends, but all of a sudden you can't enjoy your friends. And all of a sudden the Gospel of John makes sense to you. But it's not about so much about Jesus or God. It's about you and me. And all of a sudden it's like you or Jesus talking through you. That without Amir or without you, I can't be A, B, C, D. Through me, you can get to this place. Without me, you can get to that place. Okay. One of the things about Gibran is that, first of all, he was an introvert. Extreme introvert. Introverts don't care about how you think about things. Introverts have only one function in life, which is to feel. They don't write for you to think. They write for you to feel. Now, if you happen to be an extrovert, if you happen to be enormously rational, there is a good chance that you're going to look at Gibran's writing and say, well, this doesn't make any sense. You know, I want to read someone like Immanuel Kant, you know, or Jane Austen, not so much, you know, Gibran. But then, let's say, your husband suddenly died. And then you read his work on Tears and Laughter. And for the first time in many years of you having this book and glancing at the book once in a while and coming to realize it makes no sense, for the first time it makes a lot of sense. Or sorrow and joy. So for I think anything to make sense, you have to have certain readiness. You have to be cooked, or as Lilac would say, you have to be stewed in a certain environment for a while to be receptive. Uh, Gibran drank heavily. He just didn't fit life. He couldn't find a place for himself inside life. He could certainly find a place for himself while writing, and he just wrote, you know. So I think it's the second treasury. It's about maybe 400 or 500 pages. Uh, There is a chapter in that book. It's called, I think it's called "Man is a Lonely Island." While you're having fun with your friends, and while all of you are like sitting and drunk and high, the idea of picking up the book from the shelf and reading that particular, tale is not going to do much for you. You're going to find it stupid. Just wait. Have the book in your car, and then wait for that day where you and your companion get into a fist fight, emotionally speaking. Where you leave the house all bloodied emotionally and psychologically, and you have no idea where you stand in this relationship. You thought it to be solid, but now it's just foundation is sand. And you sit in your car by the lake, and it's kind of gloomy like today, and it's slightly raining, and and you're crying, let's just say, and you pick up the book and you open to that particular chapter. I know you're amongst your friends, I know you're in love, but there are things about you that no one can see, no one can understand. You're just with them all by yourself. And for the first time in 20 years, that makes sense. You're all alone. And it doesn't really need to be that you just had a conflict with your companion. I think there is something about us that pushes us into this place of absolute aloneness, where you have no idea what to do with yourself. I got married late in life. And I've always been very, very solitary. So when my wife and kids leave for, say, 4, 5, 6 hours, I'll always go back to the person I've always been. Alone, disconnected, I don't really much care about anything out there. And so when they come home, it takes me a few hours to adjust. Okay? So that book, whenever I read it, it always makes sense to me, because there's a part of me that has always been alone for the past 40 years. Initially, it was something I despised, but when I met my own teacher and slowly I began to understand a few things, now I cherish it. Irvin, you got a text. Hello, Carmen. Anyone else before we go home? Abi? No. Let me qualify that. In 1987, the best traditional singer who has ever lived in my country, Shajarian, he passed away. He had cancer some years ago. He came to the US. That's when the government allowed people to go out and visit other countries. So he came here. And I remember we waited for the superficialities to kind of wane, and so we went to the backstage. And there was a guy who used to play sitar and tambour with him, and his name is Darish Pirnia Khan. So I asked him, I'm a singer. Do you have any advice for me? He says, don't do it on your own. Mimic someone, plagiarize, copy someone, be someone's students, and do exactly as they do for about 10, 15 years. And when you have mastered, when you have kind of become proficient in this particular craft, now you have the ability to go somewhere and create your own music or your own way of singing. I think there is a time for independence and there is a time for codependency. You have children, so you know best, which is sometimes Bodhi comes to you and says, I want to get on the bike and I want to ride. And you're like holding the bike and she looks at you and says, Mom, let go of the bike. Now you look at your daughter and you say, well, she's really incompetent, and there's traffic. Now she wants independence, but it's just not the right time. But she doesn't understand that, especially if you have been grown in this particular culture where you cherish independence and you just waste independence and all that energy, and then you get to be 30, 40, 50, and you go to an AA center because now you realize that independence is good, just not when you're 12, and not when you're 20, and not when you're 30, there is nothing wrong with leaving your parents and having your own place. But what's the use of having your own place by working 40, 50 hours a week, just to pay ends meet? Rent, food, these are expensive. Life is expensive. If you stay home, if you can just understand this stuff a bit better, just tolerate your parents. They're good people, even though you may think of them to be stupid, right? Tolerate them, be codependent. If your parents don't get along, study that very, very carefully so you don't repeat that in your life. Instead of just all of a sudden, always emotionally reacting to the way they are, study them. And so, in as much your daughter perhaps wants independence, you keep holding on to the bike, And once in a while, she understands that, man, if it wasn't for my mom, I would have probably fallen, scraped my knees, broke my head, There comes a point after many tries that you run after her. You don't hold the bike and you don't hold her, but you run after her just in case. And there comes a point you say, you know what? She knows how to ride a bicycle. And she understands traffic. She understands the dangerousness of cars coming her way. And now you trust her, And then one day at the age of 10 or 12, she'll come home and say, Mom, I'm going to go out with my friends. Okay, just be careful, hon. And that's it. Now that's independence. But that independence is founded on proficiency. If, for example, they have a dicey friend, someone who just is foul-mouthed, the idea of saying, okay, hang out with them, that's not going to happen. Because they're impressionable. They could soak in, they could come home, and they could be equally bad-mouthed, right? So you protect them. Codependency is really, really, really good, especially if your dependency is on people who have relative health, physical health, psychological health, emotional health. You don't want to hang out with 20-year-olds. Your friends are losers. And I'm basically saying this because, first of all, I've been there. Most of the friends I had in my youth, they were like me, Whether or not at a certain time, something about you clicks and you kind of move towards maturity, I don't really know. But there's a time for codependency, especially when you want to learn something. And then once you become proficient, then, do whatever. Death comes to us all, Abi. Yeah. Dependency is kind of like an addiction. When you're young, you don't really understand it. When you get a little older, it's really, really tough when you get older and you realize you're becoming codependent on another human being. In the Middle East, we don't think that way. In the East, in the West, that's all people think. I'm just going to go and read book myself. I'm just going to go to a workshop. I don't need any friends. The truth is, if there is something that you want to learn, if there is something you want to experience, there is nothing wrong. It's like, I want to learn how to play piano. I need a good teacher. And I will eventually have emotional attachment to my teacher. There's a young woman who comes to the house and trains the kids how to play the piano. I really, really like her. She's fun to be around. The kids like her. And the idea of her saying to me, I'm going to leave, find yourself another teacher, that would be devastating for me. I don't even know her, but I like her, And I like that dependency that the kids have on this particular young woman. She's really, really great, And sometimes, Yusuf, my son, just bangs on the piano. So what the hell are you doing, man? Just do the lessons. Well, I want to exercise independence. You're stupid. You can't even play. You don't even know major C, major F, major G. You're just like banging on the keys. Just do what she says. And he now just obeys her. He's relatively good. In a few months, few years, he doesn't need music sheets. He doesn't need Sophia anymore. The teacher's name is also Sophia. He can just turn off the lights, close his eyes, and just improvise. Now that is good independence to have. Americans, they do everything backwards. Yeah, William.
My thing was like, if someone finds something that makes them happy, but they know there's no philosophical implication, like it doesn't fulfill anything else but that, would it make sense to do it? My example would be like someone who finds like someone who finds a chair and they just really like sitting in the chair all day. They know when I die, no one's gonna remember me as oh wow, that guy was really good at sitting in that chair. What a hero. Anything like that, But it just makes him happy. Should he sit in that chair all day?
Their anthropologists some years ago found a tiny little village. It was in a very remote area in Turkey. And they discovered that people don't walk on 2 feet. They walk on 4. These are 20, 30, 40, 50, 60-year-olds. And they were puzzled. It took us a long time to be able to kind of just walk upright. How is it that these people don't walk upright? They're walking on 4s. And so what they did was that they trained them. And it's difficult to walk on 4s, They trained them how to slowly walk upright, erect, with only your legs. And I suppose my reply to your question would be the following. If no one has ever exposed you to any other lifestyle, sitting is fine. If, on the other hand, someone has told you that there is an Indian restaurant on College and they have chicken tikka masala, but don't worry, you can sit in your chair. Don't move. I'll go buy it for you. And then I'll give that to you. And then you will taste it. And you say, my God, this is divine. It's beautiful. And then from your chair, you will call me a week later saying, can you bring me some chicken tikka masala? And my wife will tell you, I'm sorry, Amir is dead. Go get it yourself. That experience will force you out of your chair and you will walk to get chicken tikka masala because the taste buds inspired you. Okay? If you've had an experience that forces you, creates some excitement about you, and if that excitement is protected, remember, inspiration means nothing. It's just like a mood swing where you're just happy. Okay? If that inspiration is not protected, it'll go away. If you slowly begin to forget chicken tikka masala and the experience you had with it, you can continue to sit on your chair. If, on the other hand, that inspiration is protected and it just lives on, now you have this conflict. I want chicken tikka masala, but I also like to sit. And then now you're conflicted. You will either continue to sit, and the moment you want to go to bed at night, you'll say, man, I should have walked to that place and got myself some food. Now you have some regret. Now you have some remorse. And then you say, you know what, tomorrow, I'm going to go get some chicken tikka masala. And you wake up in the morning, you're about to go to chicken tikka masala, and your wife says, I made you a turkey sandwich. And chicken tikka masala goes out the window. You don't think about it anymore. But I think there is a different aspect to your question, which is because I think human beings are engaged animals. In other words, the moment you wake up, your imagination kicks in. You have plans. You want to move your body. You want to go to places. You want to do things. You want to feel your own existence. You know, sometimes it happens by you sitting on the sofa and just flipping through the channels. You know, you want to maybe watch the entire Rambo, you know, Fifthology. 50 different Rambo movies in one day. You can do that. But I think there is a point where your body just grows tired. I don't know if you've ever been to like people who've been bedridden. They have bed sores. So every so often someone needs to come and move their body from their back to their side, from their side to their stomach. They have to just keep moving. And I think for us it's the same way. You physically just have to move all the time. And it's just not limited to your physical body. Emotionally you have to move. Just reading Khalil Gibran is not enough.
Well, like the chair was more like an analogy for something. It could be a boring office job, something you don't care about.
There are lots of people. I mean, I don't care for this job, but I want to make sure that I pay the rent. It's not the job I like. It's the eviction I don't like. So I stay here. There is nothing about life that's that interesting. Most of us do things because we're just burdened by them. I mean, this class, you don't want to come here, do you, William? Of course not. I mean, sure, but really, you don't want to come here. But why do you do it? You need the grade. I don't blame you. You know, I mean, I don't really blame you for like playing with your laptop or iPad or cell phone or whatever. I mean, I'll give you a C or a D, but I don't blame you for being the way you are. You just don't find this class interesting because you're not there yet. So. Lilac, stewed enough? What time is it?
5 after.
Oh, you have 10 minutes, Lilac. It's your lucky day. Yeah? But
Did you like this job at one point?
I still love it. Yeah. Have you ever had sex?
Nope.
Good job. I knew you were a nun, like Mother Teresa. You know, you can have love-filled sex and you can have loveless sex. In a loveless sex situation, you just two bodies grind against one another. One is satisfied, takes a shower and leaves. Maybe there is some shame, maybe there is some respectability involved, so they'll delay their departure for like 10 minutes. Okay. Sometimes your physical encounter, engagement with another is love-filled, and it's a lot of raw passion. And it's kind of like you hold all this anger inside you because your father or because your mother, and at a certain point you just scream. And your father says, why the hell are you screaming? What your father doesn't realize that you scream because you've been holding your feelings or emotions for the past like 10 years, and now it erupts. Okay. What happens if you have understood the evolution of love, the various stages it goes through? You kind of use your companion's body like a map. You know, if you do GPS when you want to go somewhere, turn right, then go left, then go straight, then stay for 3 miles, 5 miles, 7 miles. And all of a sudden you realize you use your companion's body the same way. You stay with the hands for like 10 minutes, and you stay with the lips for 20 minutes, and you stay with the abdomen for whatever, you know. And then comes the intercourse. And that's where the magic happens. And you try your best to delay satisfaction as long as you possibly can, because you can actually feel the magic just right in front of your eyes. Everything is embodied. Now, ideas are very much the same way. You can't just ask a question and just look for a quick response, because ideas are something you have to play with. They have history, they have culture, they have emotions, they have thoughts and reflections about them. There is a way to express them, there's a way to receive them, there's a certain tone of voice you need to have to express certain kinds of ideas. There's so many things about ideas, you know. And so when someone asks me a question, for example, and I happen to be in the right mood for that particular question, it really is like I am in the presence of this woman. And I want to look at her hair and her eyes and her lips. And I want to figure out what lives inside this idea. How did this idea come about? How does one best approach it? Now, the problem with ideas is that it takes a while for two bodies to become comfortable, which means that you have to have this engagement, physical engagement with another's body 50, 60, 70, 80 times until you become proficient as to what you need to do exactly. That embodies you, embodies the other person. There is harmony, harmoniousness and unity, okay? Ideas are very much the same way. The only problem is our knowledge is limited, our experiences are limited. It takes us a long time to figure out the ins and outs of any idea, you know? And so when you walk into a classroom and someone says, well, can we talk about what it means to be lonely, what it means to be depressed? I mean, it's really, really a beautiful question. And because I'm a new, you know, student at this game, I realize it's my first time hearing this question. It's my first time having sex with this question. I don't really know what to do with it. I don't know how to approach it. But as time goes on, I realize, well, you know, there are lots of reasons for depression. There are lots of streets and places you need to go to figure out what lives inside this thing, you know. And so as long, I suppose, as I can do that, I can continue to enjoy. So. Anna, anything? Carmen? Yeah.
It's not your previous answer to something you think that absurdism.
What time is it?
About 3 minutes.
We can't talk about the concept of absurd, because first I have to say a couple of things about the myth of Sisyphus. But I can't really talk about the myth of Sisyphus without talking about power. And I can't talk about power without talking about death. And then desires. And then repetition. And then the notion of absurdity.
And hold on for 3 minutes.
Maybe I could. Yeah, so maybe Tuesday next week, if things go well. Jason, anything? We have a minute. No cookies here? a quickie question. Evan. Well, it's good to see all of you. Did you? Good. Have a nice day. See you next week.